Hello, my name's Walton. I'm the archaeologist here at Butser Ancient Farm. Recently, myself and a team of my colleagues and other experts have been constructing a neolithic house here on the site. The archaeological evidence came from an excavation conducted by Wessex Archaeology back in 2012. But before we talk about the construction process of this building in more detail, I'd like to introduce you to the building we've been working on and some of its features. So we've nearly completed the outside of the building, but we'd also like to do a lot of work on the inside of the building too, to furnish it and make it seem more like a home, if that's what it was. We aim to furnish this building too because we would really like to give our visitors a fully immersive experience. So that means not just being able to see a building, but also smell, touch and feel what it might have been like to be inside a home in the past. For me, the phenomenological experience of being inside the building is just as important as the experimental construction process itself. So we've used a wide range of materials to construct this building, partly to show what might have been possible in the past. We don't know for sure, there's more than one possibility, but for example, one end wall has this lovely daub. It's my favourite material from the past. It's made of a mixture of straw, possibly clay, and of course my favourite ingredient, cow poo. But there are other ingredients in the building. The other end wall, for example, is made of oak planking. And there is some archaeological evidence for this. We've also got a roof which is made of water reed. This is the end gable wall where we used some oak planking. There is archaeological evidence for this. And this was an excellent opportunity for us as a team to explore that feeling of using a Neolithic tool. So we constructed some stone tools and axes so that we could try out for ourselves what it would be like to work on wood like this. We had a lot of fun. It was a really good opportunity. So in addition to creating oak planking using Neolithic tools, we've also used lashing, which is simply made out of plant fibre, this lovely cordage here, to hold the building together. And in addition, because archaeological evidence from Germany, in fact, reveals to us much more about Neolithic carpentry, we know that they were perfectly capable of pegging joints as well as lashing them. So we've had a go at using bone and stone tools to create holes through which pegs can be used to joint the building together. Thank you very much for watching our video. I really hope you've enjoyed finding out a little bit more about the construction project here at Butser Ancient Farm, and I also very much look forward to being able to welcome everybody back to the farm in the very near future to visit our building. Bye bye!
Hello, my name's Trevor Creighton. I'm a colleague of Claire's and also worked on the building of our Horton Neolithic house. I wanted to make this presentation to show you what we did with the building, why we did it, and to talk a little bit about why that might be important. Thanks very much. Butser Ancient Farm is located in the south of England, near the port city of Portsmouth. We've been doing experimental archaeology for nearly 50 years. Most of our experimental research involves building. We have buildings representing the Neolithic, Iron Age, Romano-British and Anglo-Saxon periods. We have a large education program with 35,000 school children visiting each year, as well as around 20,000 other public coming to our site. The archaeology for our building was excavated in 2012 by Gareth Chaffey of Wessex Archaeology. The site is near what's now Heathrow Airport, not terribly far from London. The dating, based on associated cereal grains and nuts, is 3600 to 3800 BCE, and that's quite early in the British Neolithic, which runs from about 4000 to 2200 BCE. You can see from this aerial photograph of the site when the building was partially excavated its dimensions of just over 15 metres long by between 7.7 and 6.1 metres wide. From that we can see that it is not a regular rectangle, and this is quite significant to our building, as we'll see later in the presentation. Except for monumental structures like Stonehenge, prehistoric building in the southeast of Britain was executed with timber and other organic materials. As a result of the soil, preservation in this area is poor, so Neolithic buildings are not common in the archaeology. One of the reasons for choosing the Horton 2 house as an example that we wanted to build was the relatively clear preservation of an archaeological footprint. We can see in this picture a clear foundation trench which appears to have been timber filled. Some of the trenches are up to 1 metre deep. What's interesting about this is that there are very few post holes. There are possibly one at each corner of the building and 2 internally, which sit near the divided walls, which we can see indicated by the white arrow. So our structure is unusual in 2 ways. Firstly, because so few survive in this part of Britain, and secondly, because of its unusual ground plan. This drawing illustrates a possible reconstruction of a linear band ceramic longhouse. It is of earlier date than our building, but illustrates the aisled post-build structures so prevalent in European Neolithic and later archaeology. Although this exact building type doesn't occur in British Neolithic archaeology, similar aisled post-built structures do. We can understand as experimental archaeologists how the posts can support walls and a roof. Of course, we have to accept that our interpretation of this building might be wrong, but it's fairly clear from the archaeology how it will work as a piece of engineering. A large number of posts can support quite a heavy roof, possibly even allowing the building to have a second floor. You can see from this ground plan that Horton 2 is very different. It averages around 7 metres wide, but has only 2 internal posts. That raises for us a number of questions. The first, of course, is did it ever have a roof? It is possible that Horton 2 was a kraal for cattle or other animals. However, there's no evidence from phosphate analysis of the soil that animals were ever present in the structure. So our first and very important assumption is that Horton 2 was a structure with a roof. The archaeology at Horton suggests that there may have been timbers placed upright in the ground, which is why we've built this plank wall that you can see in the photograph. We've made a choice not to build all of our walls in this way. So let's now go through the process by which we made that decision. If we dig a foundation trench based on the one excavated at Horton and then place vertical planks in it, we create a box structure, which I've illustrated very badly here in this drawing. This is not what we've done, so let's have a look at why that's so. First of all, it's important to know that during the Neolithic, the area where the Horton excavation took place was a wetland. So we have assumed that the builders would have had good access to reed from their wetlands. This in turn makes an excellent roofing material for waterproofing. This type of roof is known as a thatched roof. To be waterproof and to perform well as a structure, a thatched roof needs to have a roof angle of 45 to 50 degrees. This then determines the shape of our roof. This graphic is a very simple illustration of the profile that our house may have had, which is a familiar profile of a box with a triangular roof set on top. This is a very practical type of building. The roofs allow good headroom, and it's one of the reasons that we still use this basic design today. However, it does present structural challenges. We can overcome these quite easily with modern building materials, but not so easily done in the Neolithic. For a start, our roof, fully thatched and with its supporting timbers, weighs about 10,000 kilograms. That weight really wants to collapse the walls. As a result, the walls have to be pulled together in some way. We need an internal structure to stop our building collapsing. The building will also have to resist other forces that want to make it fall down lengthwise, and also twisting forces, particularly those that come from winds. High-sided rectangular buildings are particularly susceptible to wind forces, which is why in modern buildings we have bracing technologies. This photograph is actually of an 18th century agricultural shed. It uses much earlier medieval building techniques, but it's an excellent illustration of how medieval builders overcome the forces that I've described. Even in this photograph, it's clear the level of engineering required to overcome these forces. Much of the most interesting technology that's been built into this structure is actually invisible to us here, and it takes the form of complex joints which themselves act as braces against the forces. Interestingly enough, this building is approximately the same size as the Horton 2 house, actually slightly narrower. This forces us to ask the question of how we can maintain this structural integrity using Neolithic building techniques. Our earlier Neolithic building at Butser Ancient Farm, which was slightly smaller than Horton 2, suffered from many structural problems as a result of its own weight as well as wind. For this reason, we adopted a very simple solution to take away the walls. This leaves us with a very simple structure, triangular in form, often called an A-frame. This photograph, taken quite early in our construction, shows clearly some of the structural elements of our building. The two posts in the foreground are those that we saw in the ground plan. We've yet to build the two small dividing walls that sit beside those posts, but you can see other elements of our building very clearly. The main timber in this frame is Scots pine. Scots pine was available in the Neolithic, and it grows fast and straight, so it's an excellent building material. The thin wood, which runs along the length of the building, is hazel. Hazel is light and strong, and again, readily available in the Neolithic. So this makes an excellent base on which to tie our thatched roof. As Claire explained in the introduction, our building is tied together with cordage as well as being pegged together with oak pegs. We've also used some very simple cut joints just to increase the structural integrity of the building. So what we hope we've created is a strong, long-lasting building that's not only an excellent demonstration of Neolithic technology, but hopefully won't fall down on our visitors. So I hope I've explained from an engineering point of view why we've chosen to build the building we have. However, archaeologically, we need to answer several questions. First of all, it has to be said that there is no direct evidence of slanting posts in the ground in the archaeology. Although the archaeology is fairly poorly preserved and doesn't preclude the possibility, it has to be said that this is a potential compromise in our design. A definite compromise, and a very annoying one, is that local government regulations restricted us in the height of the building that we could make. Perhaps the single biggest compromise was our capacity to build the building with Neolithic technology. None of us was experienced with the technologies that we were using, and it was necessary for us to justify experimentally that we could perform the processes with Neolithic tools. It's very clear from archaeology that the capacity for building in the Neolithic was well advanced. However, we were unable to attain the highest standards of Neolithic building, which restricted our capacity to engineer the structure. While it's very important that we acknowledge these limitations in our experiment, that does not mean the experiment is not worthwhile. To begin with, our building's been constructed by a relatively small team. We've had typically 4 to 6 people and no more than 10 people involved with construction at any one time. It has not been necessary for us to rely on machinery or power tools to construct any of the elements of the building. It's important for me to clarify that we did use power tools in the construction, but these were only used for convenience. All of the techniques that those tools were applied to had already been justified experimentally using mock Neolithic tools and technology. So these aspects of our approach clearly demonstrate that a relatively small number of people with quite minimal building skills can create a large and ambitious structure. We were methodical in following the ground plan of the original archaeology. As a result of this, and maintaining the constant roof pitch of around 50 degrees for our thatch to shed water, we generated what can clearly be seen in the photograph, a hog-back profile to the roof. Instead of running horizontal to the ground, the ridge of our roof actually slopes towards both ends. That's most clearly seen in the right-hand side of this photograph. The bowed sides and distinctive ridge profile of our Horton 2 house create a very strong structure, and it reminds us of Viking-era Scandinavian designs to some extent. While our Horton 2 building is quite unusual, as we've discussed, its ground plan does have similarities with other Neolithic structures, from Britain, from Ireland and Scandinavia, for example. This leads us to ask some important questions. For example, is the shape of the ground plan and the distinctive roof evidence of a particular engineering choice adopted by some Neolithic cultures? Is this the beginning of a transition to roundhouses, which come to dominate domestic building in the Bronze and Iron Ages in Irish and British archaeology? These are of course highly speculative suggestions, but they are almost forced upon us because of the distinctive shape of the building, a fact which is made so apparent by building it, perhaps more so than sketching on paper or rendering on computer. But what we think is most important about our Horton experiment is its capacity to demonstrate the ambition of Neolithic builders. Even with its A-frame construction and its roof bearing directly on the ground, Horton is a large and imposing structure. If the original structure had walls, it will be even more so. Having nearly completed the construction of Horton, it's really nice to dream about the possibility of actually doing another structure based on the same archaeology, but this time using walls of a considerable height, maybe with vertical planking. It would be very interesting to think about how we can use Neolithic technology to overcome all of the difficulties of such a building that we outlined earlier. For the time being, that's not possible, but it's great to dream. Once it's completed, our Horton house will be open to our visiting public, who number about 55,000 people each year. We think Horton represents a great way to demonstrate to our visitors the capacity, the intelligence and the endeavour of Neolithic people, and that in itself makes it worthwhile as a project.
Thank you very much for taking the time to look at our presentation, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'd like to thank very much Klaus Kropp for making this conference happen. It's been really great, and I've been very much looking forward to looking at all of the other papers. Also like to thank Roland and Exarch, who I think are working very hard in the background. And I hope we can welcome you to Butser at some time in the future, but at any time I think it'd be great to hear from any of our colleagues, particularly if you have experience with this type of building or just some different thoughts to us. It'd be wonderful. So please feel free to make contact with us, and we hope we see you soon. Bye.